Okay, I think it worked. I think I'm live. I'm still very new to this. I've done a couple of live stream, but I've never done a live stream by myself. I've always done it with someone. So it's kind of like intimidating to do a live stream by yourself. Okay, I can see there are 3 people. Good, good. Hi guys, good to see you. Good to have you here. Thank you for coming. Let me just wait for a few seconds. Okay, if you have any questions about my book or anything really, let me know. And yeah, I ask you on Instagram what you want to know. As you know, I've recently published a book. It's right here. It's called I Lived in Shanghai. And yeah, it's basically about my experience living in Shanghai and studying at Fudan. So I thought it would be nice to have this little Q&A session with you guys and just answer your questions that you've asked me on Instagram. So I have them right here. Okay, maybe we can start with the first question, which is also the title of this live stream. Basically, how much info about the real China is in the book? Like, how much could I allow myself? Was I allowed to show you like the real China in the book? Well, I think that the book is basically about real China. I think that I was trying to do my best to be very honest in the book. And I think, I mean, it worked well. I think it is a very honest picture of my experience living in China, both the bad and the good. I definitely didn't stop myself from talking about the negative stuff in the book. I said that I kind of get distracted when I read the chat. Hey guys, good to have you here. Thank you for coming. What was I saying? Yeah, so basically, a big part of my book, mainly the beginning, I talk about a lot of negative stuff. I didn't particularly enjoy my experience living in China from the very beginning. There was a lot that bothered me. There was a lot that I didn't like in the beginning. A lot I had to get used to. And I was very honest about that. And in general, I talk about a lot of stuff in the book, like, for example, racism or substance abuse. Those are not easy topics to talk about. And yeah, I was being very honest about it, about what I saw in China. So yeah, in that way, I do feel like I could allow myself to show you the real China. And also, like, why would I want to write a book and not, be honest? Yeah. But it's kind of difficult to do a live stream by yourself because you get so distracted by the chat. Anyways, and also one of the reasons why I also really wanted to talk about it is because I feel like the concept of like what is real China is something that you talk a lot. Oh, you don't want to hear me speaking Chinese. My Chinese is so bad. Like, I'm embarrassed to say anything, I mean, I got back to studying Chinese a while back, like a couple of months back. But I had a long break since I was, away from China for quite some time now. So yeah, you really don't want to hear me speaking Chinese because that's kind of embarrassing for me. but I really hope my Chinese will get better. That's why I got back to studying now. And, you know, when you have a long break, it's kind of like you forget a lot. But once you get back to it, like you quickly like remember stuff that you learn. So I hope that I will get better. And of course, like one day when I go back to China, it will definitely get much better. Anyways, what was I say? What I was saying about the real China thing, I wanted to say that it's kind of like funny. You have been learning Chinese for 5 more years. No, not really. Not for 5 years. Yeah, I mean, I studied Chinese at university, but I spent like in total, I spent about 2 years in China. And then I've studied it as well when I lived in Thailand and Denmark. But, you know, I think studying any language outside of that country where that language is spoken is a very different, you know, thing. Can I read Chinese characters? Yeah, I can read. I mean, I can read some Chinese characters. I obviously did study that at school. But yeah, back to the topic again. What I was saying, what was I even saying? Oh yeah, the whole concept of real China, because I feel like when you live in Shanghai, people always tell you that like you don't live in the real China, like Shanghai is not real China. And I can totally understand where like people are coming from, that, you know, obviously Shanghai is a very unique place. It's a huge city and it's very different to live in Shanghai and anywhere else in China, really. And I also think, well, obviously it's very different to live in a smaller city, but I think even living in like Beijing or Guangzhou or Shenzhen or whatever, all the other huge cities, is also very different than living in Shanghai. And that's also why I wanted to call my book I Lived in Shanghai and not I Lived in China, because I know that the experience of living in Shanghai specifically is quite different. But yeah, that's something people would always talk about in Shanghai, that like, you know, we're not in real China. And that's why I actually called one of the chapters in my book is called Nanjing, the Real China. And the reason why, it was a little ironic though, because Nanjing was the first place I went to outside of Shanghai. At this point, I was in China for like, sorry, I got distracted by the chat section again. How do people do it? How do people live stream? And like some people even walk on the street and live stream. Like, oh my God. Anyways, yeah, Nanjing was the first place I went to outside of Shanghai. And I was so excited to like finally see the real China, because everyone was like, Shanghai is not the real China. And now we're finally, you know, going into the realness. And then we went to Nanjing, and it was still sort of the same-ish, meaning, yeah, Nanjing is much smaller than Shanghai, but it's still a huge city, very modern city, and it's you know, it's this funny thing where, yes, I did experience things in Nanjing that I didn't necessarily experience in Shanghai on a daily basis, meaning, for example, we went sightseeing in Nanjing and there are a lot of people who wanted to take pictures with us. But at the same time, I think those people, I mean, I don't think, I know those people were not like natives from Nanjing. There are also like, you know, Chinese tourists from different parts of the country, where maybe like foreigners are like, there are not that many foreigners there. I got something in my eye. And yeah, but anyways, I remember being in Nanjing and thinking like, okay, like this is what people talk about, like this is like the real China, and the reality is that it's not really that different. So yeah, and that's why I called this chapter in my book Nanjing, the Real China. Oh yeah, I wish I could go to Chongqing. I really want to go. I heard so much good about this city, and I feel like when I lived in Shanghai, not that many people talked about it yet. But I guess that's the thing about China. Like those cities are developing so fast. Like the very first time I went to China, like no one even talked about Shenzhen, and I feel like the second time around I went there, everyone was like, "Oh, Shenzhen." yeah, so there's so many interesting cities in China, and they're developing so fast. So I really cannot wait until I can go back and travel. Now I got totally distracted again. What was I even saying? Yeah, I was talking about that chapter of my book called Nanjing, the Real China. And then also in Nanjing, a friend of mine was telling us this story, how she went to this like smaller city, like actually smaller city in north of China. And she was like, you know, telling us that she was like the only foreigner there. And that was the real China. So my point with sharing this story was sort of that wherever you go, people are always going to be like, oh, you know, this is not real enough. And by real, people also mean like authentic, you know? And people are always going to be like, oh no, this is more authentic. No, this is, you know, this is even more like a real authentic China. Yeah, and I think sometimes it's also kind of funny because is Shanghai not real China? I mean, it is, right? It's just, it's the same as saying that Paris is not real France. And I guess, or like New York is not real US. And I guess that's how it always is with these like huge cities, that there are quite different from, you know, the rest of the country. I don't know, do you guys have any questions, or do you want me to just continue answering questions from Instagram? Yeah, that's true. I agree with that. China is sort of like Europe, like every province is almost like a different country, right? I think it's true. And I think a lot of people who've never been to China kind of like forget about that. Okay, let me see the next question. Oh, I think that one is kind of interesting. What made you choose Shanghai for the book over Paris or other places you have stayed? So besides Shanghai, I've also, oh, I'm glad that my book is on your to read list. I hope you're gonna like it. Let me know when you read it, DM me and let me know how you liked it. And yeah, I mean, I'm definitely planning to like travel all over China at some point when I can. What's my plan for the next couple of years? Continuing living and working in Poland? I don't know. I honestly don't even make plans. And my plan was never to stay for that long. I think while I'm young, I just want to live in many different places and move around. And I love Warsaw. It's such a great place to live. I really, really do love this city, but I'm also so curious of other places. And, you know, I would love to go back to live in Asia in cities that I've already lived in, like Shanghai, obviously, but also Bangkok. I love Bangkok and I would love to live there and try what is it like to work in Bangkok, for example, because I've only studied there. But I would love to try living in other cities, you know, like Jakarta is like on my list, or like Rio, or like Mexico City. I'm kind of really into all these cities that are maybe like less popular, or less popular meaning like, you know, I don't necessarily want to live in like New York or London, not at all. Definitely not London. Maybe New York if I could get a chance at some point in my life. But I just really want to not only travel, because like traveling, that's one thing, but I also just really want to live in different places. So sorry, I got distracted because someone is saying we have no questions. Okay, cool. Yeah. But I'm glad to have you here though. I'm glad to, you can just watch me speak. Oh, I'm so glad to hear that. I'm And good luck with moving to Shanghai. Someone here is saying that he's moving to Shanghai to teach. That's amazing. Lucky you. But yeah, anyways, back to what I was saying. I'm not right now. I'm also like trying not to plan anything. I'm just like planning the next like 2-3 months, because for the last, like, you know, obviously since the pandemic started, like all my plans are not working out. I had so many plans. I was supposed to move, yeah, and nothing worked out. I was actually supposed to move to Indonesia, so I was super excited for that, but that didn't work out. But and now I really just don't know. I think the pandemic really taught me not to make too many plans too far ahead. One, because right now is just not a good time to plan, but two is also just like I do have this issue that I constantly make plans and I constantly like live in the future instead of being more focused on now. And so, yeah, but I hope, you know, everything in the world will be fine soon. And I hope that I can sort of go on, will travel, because I haven't traveled for a while. And also maybe at some point move somewhere. I really don't know. I just kind of, I'm afraid to plan at this point. Okay, so let's go back to that question. What made you choose Shanghai for the book over Paris or other places that I've lived in? So beside Paris, I've also lived in Bangkok, Copenhagen, and Warsaw. Well, what made me choose Shanghai was that I went to Shanghai right after graduating high school. So it was just like a very, you know, it's like the first year of your university degree is a very like important time in your life. It was the very first time for me moving out and living by myself, and not only like living by myself, I was living by myself in China, on like, you know, so far away from my family. And so I think Shanghai was just very important for me because it was simply like the first place I went to. I do think that if, you know, let's say it would be the other way around, Bangkok would be the first place I went to, I think then probably Bangkok would be that special for me. But since it was Shanghai, it just changed so much in my life. I really, I mean, I grew up, I had to grow up fast because I was all by myself in China. So I kind of had no choice. And, you know, it was a very like important time in my life because it was the first time I was like by myself. I could do what I wanted. I was meeting people from all around the world, and just I was really like exposed to this completely new universe for me because I've never been to China at this point. I've never, you know, I've just lived in Poland and Denmark, so I've never even been in like environments that were so multicultural. And also that, you know, being exposed to people from all around the world. Like in China, I was friends with people from, you know, Australia, all over Asia, US. That was just very, like, that did a lot to my brain. I feel like that really like expanded my horizon. And yeah. Someone is asking if Fudan is a good place to study international relations and politics. I unfortunately don't know because I haven't studied that at Fudan. So I guess me trying to help you wouldn't be a very like, I mean, I can't be very helpful. Like I only did a Chinese language program at Fudan. So okay, let's do another question. So, what's your favorite chapter of the book? That is actually a very difficult question. I was thinking about that earlier today, and I was like, oh my God, I should come up with an answer, you know? Thank you. I'm glad that you like my videos. Thank you so much. Yeah, like I should have an answer for like what's the favorite chapter in my book, but at the same time I feel like maybe like the chapters are like my babies, so it's hard to pick one, but I definitely have some favorites. I really like all the Guilin chapters. So I went on a spring break to Guilin, and yeah, and I've also recently made a video about it. So if you're interested, someone is asking if my book is available in China. Well, yes, you can get it on Amazon, and they do ship to China. And you can get it as an ebook if you have a reader, like a Kindle or something. Then you get it right away, or you can get it shipped. You can get like the paperback, like the physical copy, like this one. Yeah, and they do ship to China. And I think you can order it for like Amazon US probably. Yeah, now I got super distracted. Oh no, Guilin. Okay, I loved Guilin chapters because this whole trip was just a very weird trip. It was spring break, and when you think spring break, you have a very different picture in your head, probably mostly like American style spring break. Like we don't really even have spring break in Europe, so like I always just had this image of like people chilling at the pool in their bikinis and like sunshine and palm trees. And we went to Guilin, which is quite kind of like an exotic-ish location because it's located in the south of China, so like south central China. And we went there during rainy season, which is something you should definitely not do. You should not travel to like tropical destinations during the rainy season. So I don't even understand why they had it, like why they even gave us option gave us option to choose Guilin. But yeah, since basically we went like 20 hours away from Shanghai, we had to take a train, and we went there and like we couldn't see anything because it was pouring rain, it was foggy. Yeah, it was just very weird in that way. And also we had like crazy schedule. We had to wake up we had to be ready. We have to be ready at 6:30 a.m. Imagine a school trip with a bunch of like school kids, university kids, so not really kids, university students. And you have to freaking like be ready at 6:30 a.m. Like who comes up with that? I mean, and yeah, and we also like were not allowed to leave our hotel. We were not allowed to drink alcohol, of course. And we had this like crazy schedule where we were supposed to sightsee from like 6:30 a.m. until like 10 p.m. in the evening. So it was just very bizarre, and they really didn't want us to party. Like they did everything in their power to stop us from partying, which we kind of did anyways. Like we did go out a little bit, but still, like obviously we didn't go on a trip to South Central China, like in a train for 20 hours to party. Like Shanghai has some of the best partying in the world. Like if you just want to, get wasted, you would stay in Shanghai. So that was kind of funny. Yeah, this whole situation was just weird. So I really like Guilin chapters. I also really like a chapter that is called Shanghai by Night is Scary, because it's the story about me going out in Shanghai for the very first time. Like the very first time I went to a nightclub downtown. It was Barouche, for those of you who know Shanghai, like the classic for expats, I guess. Yeah, and I called the chapter Shanghai by Night is Scary, which is obviously, again, for those of you who know Shanghai, like the opposite. Shanghai is really not that scary. It's a relatively very safe city. And like also by night, Shanghai is not scary because there's so many people everywhere and there are so many lights. And there are, so many like neon signs and like food everywhere. You have street food open until like, really late hours. So it's really not scary. So the reason why I called the chapter of my book Shanghai by Night is Scary is because I was kind of like just, trying to show you that in the beginning, when I didn't know Shanghai was like foreign and unfamiliar to me. I thought that because it was foreign and unfamiliar, it was scary, but really it's not. So it's kind of funny to think about now that like, oh, the first time I went out in Shanghai, I was so terrified. I still remember I had to go over to my friend's place, and she lived like maybe 15 minutes away on Dashuelu, if anyone went to Fudan or knows like Fudan area. So yeah, and it was like a 15-minute walk, and I had to go there by myself, and I was so terrified. I was like half running because I was so scared. And now when I think about it, it's just so funny. Like, why would I be scared, you know? So yeah, that chapter is, I think, interesting. And I'll also talk a lot about like the whole, you know, nightlife scene in Shanghai, which I think is quite interesting because not that many people know about nightlife. And not that many nightlife in Shanghai. And I feel like, you know, people often, at least that's what I experienced, people are often surprised when I tell them that like nightlife in Shanghai is amazing and there's so many amazing places to go to, and the city is just really alive at night. Will the book be published in Polish and other languages? I wish. I will see. I mean, if I ever get a chance to get it translated, then I would definitely, you know, be willing to do that. I would be very happy to do that. For now, I will definitely not translate it by myself because I've already translated it kind of to English. So the very first copy or version of the book was actually written in Polish because I always thought that since I am Polish, it would be easier for me to find a publisher in Poland. And I kind of did find a publisher in Poland who wanted to publish my book when the book was still in Polish, but then the pandemic started and the deal didn't go through. It failed. And I was like left alone with a book in Polish. And it was kind of pointless because I knew that, you know, I have my YouTube channel where I speak English, and then I had this book that is written in Polish, and I have my Polish audience is very little. So it wouldn't make sense for me to self-publish a book in Polish. I knew that it had to be in English. And also it's just, I wanted it to be in English because I wanted everyone to be able to understand. Yeah. So that was already like a little traumatizing process for me That's maybe a little of an exaggeration. But I had this book written in Polish and I had to translate to English, which wasn't really translating because the thing is, I mean, someone's saying David Lewandowski. Cool. Yeah. He's Polish, just like me. Well, anyways, I wasn't really translating. I was more like rewriting. If you would see the Polish version, it's so different. I would say maybe it's like I changed like 60% of the book. It's completely different. I wrote new things. I removed some things. Like it's so different because the thing is, like when I was writing it in Polish, I also had like a Polish reader, Polish person in mind. And then later on, when I was writing in English, I knew that like it's for everyone. Everyone needs to be able to understand. There are small things, like, for example, at some point I was trying to explain that a train station in China was huge. And I was saying in my Polish version, I said it's like 4 times bigger than the airport in Warsaw. And obviously small things like that I had to change because like people don't know what's the size of airport in Warsaw, right? So those were kind of like references for Polish people. But also I really discovered that I think it's easier for me to write in English. I prefer to write in English than Polish. Have you ever been to any other cities in China besides Shanghai? Yes, as I told you, the first city outside of Shanghai was Nanjing. I've obviously been to Beijing. I went to, Suzhou, Hangzhou, the cities near Shanghai. I've been to Shenzhen and Guilin. And that's pretty much it. So I think once I counted, it was like 6 places or something. That's not like that much when you think about how huge China is and how many like different cities there are in China. And there's so many. Any plans to visit Turkey in the near future? Well, no, not in near future. Like last year, I went to Turkey twice. I love Turkey. And I have a couple of videos from Turkey coming out. I think actually they're going to come out next month. So yeah, I really do love Turkey. It's probably like one of my favorite countries. But anyways, with China and traveling around China, like my dream is to just like go to China for like a couple of months, like 3 months or something, or like have 3 months off, work or whatever, and just travel around China, because there's so many places that I want to see, like, Chongqing, Chengdu, I want to see, Xiamen, Dali, all of Yunnan, basically. Harbin. I would love to go to like North China, like Inner Mongolia. Like, oh, there's just so many places. Yeah, there are vlogs about. I actually, at least like I would say maybe 4 or something. I will see. I spent 2 weeks in Turkey a while back, and I've never published these vlogs, so I have to. I will be publishing them soon. I feel like I've talked about something before, even like, guys, I don't know how people do these live streams, like, and talk, walk, and read the comment section. Oh, Jiangji, yeah, I could probably like totally mispronounce it. Yes, I really want to go there too. I was actually considering going there or Guilin, but then I went to Guilin when I went on that school trip that I write about in my book. So what other places in China should I go to? Let me know. Someone is asking how many copies of my book I have sold. I have sold about 130 something at this point, or like almost 140 maybe now. So yeah, I'm happy. I'm very happy that people are reading my book. And I did get feedback from a couple of people who already read it or are like in the middle or something, that they're enjoying it. And those are like the best messages ever. Like, it's so sweet. So if anyone out there ever reads my book, please send me a message and let me know what you think. I would appreciate honest feedback. If there's something that you don't like, I mean, of course, it's never like easy to hear, but I want to hear that, because that's the only way I can, make it better the next time. Do I have TikTok? Yes, I do. There is like a link, I think, in my video's description, maybe even in this one. Yeah, I do have a TikTok. It's the same as all my social media. It's basically just by Kaja. Oh, someone is saying that one of your videos have 2 million views on Chinese Bilibili website. Well, that's probably a video that someone stole from me, because I do have a Bilibili account, but none of my videos have 2 million views. But yeah, there are some people on Bilibili that like basically steal my videos. Not only mine, they do it with other people as well. But like, yeah, they steal videos and they post it on Bilibili, and then these videos get like crazy views, which is really annoying. I mean, annoying that they, steal something that, you make. Were there any stories that didn't make the book? I mean, well, yes and no, of course. I mean, I was in China for 1 year, or this book is about that first year in China. So obviously, it's when you're writing something, it's the same when you're making a video, right? A video is 10 minutes long. A book is, my book is like 260 pages long, 265, I think. You cannot write about everything, but I think all the most interesting stories. To be honest, like nothing like else that was super interesting happened, because if something interesting would happen, like why wouldn't I put it in the book, you know? It was obviously my goal to make the book as interesting as possible. Someone is saying something is fishy with this book. I don't know. Read it and find out. Thank you. Nice to see you too. Are you planning to go back to China? Yes. I was supposed to go back to China, but obviously the pandemic happened. So how to get the book? There is a link in the description of this live stream. And also, if you just look up I lived in Shanghai on Amazon, it will come up. So do you have ideas for other books? Yes, I do. I have a lot of ideas. Actually, I would say I have like 3 ideas. 2 quite solid that I had for like probably even maybe a couple of years now. I'm in general that type of person that has a lot of ideas. Like I have too many ideas and like no time to execute all my ideas. I feel like I don't know if I want to talk about it because it's so early, but okay, well, whatever. I actually kind of started writing something new. So yes, I guess those of you who have watched my vlogs, you could probably tell what it is about. I think it's quite obvious if you like look at all my vlogs and like what I did in life. So yeah, I mean, I didn't expect to start writing that soon after just publishing my book. I published my book technically on the 12th of June. So it's been a little over a month. So it's all very fresh. But yeah, one day I just got this like random wave of inspiration, which as someone who, you know, does creative jobs for a living, I know that this is not something that happens very often. So when this like creative inspiration, whatever wave comes at you, like you just have to sit down and write down your ideas, and you just really have to like make a good use of it. So yeah, one day I just randomly got really inspired and I sat by my computer and I wrote like 30 pages, and I wrote plenty of like my thoughts also to future chapters and topics that I want to talk about. So yeah, I definitely do want to write another book. I really hope I will. Actually, when I just published like this book, when I published my book, I was just like so a little tired of the finishing line of like the last couple of months, that I thought like, okay, this is it for now, and maybe I will probably not write anything else for a while. Not that I don't want to. I want to write because I love writing, but writing books is not the best like business. As you can imagine nowadays, not that many people read, and it's a lot of work. Like it took me years to write this book. So yeah, it's just something that is super time consuming. So I felt like, okay, now I wrote this book, like I gave myself time, I invested in this book, and now, you know, it's time to focus on other things. But then I just randomly got really inspired and started writing, and I just kind of remembered why I loved writing in the first place. Because the thing is, like, I finished writing, I lived in Shanghai already like in January this year, December, or writing the English version. I finished writing the Polish version in December 2019, so right before the pandemic. But since like the last couple of months, you know, I mainly did like all the work that goes into publishing a book. You know, like I had to learn how to self-publish. I had to learn formatting. I had to, you know, basically figure everything out and get it checked and work on a cover and the description and all these things. So I haven't been writing for a while. So it's almost like I forgot how good it feels to just write, especially when you're really inspired and you have like all these stories in your head that you want to put on paper and you want to share, I almost like, yeah, forgot how good it feels, like how much I love writing. Yeah, so basically that's a very long answer to the question that yes, I'm definitely planning to write more. And I just really hope that I can write, because if it would be up to me, I would definitely do it. And I think probably soonish I will be posting videos asking you guys for help, because I know I do have, I know a lot of you guys are from the country that I'll be writing about, so I might need your help. Yeah, so John is saying that I should upload my videos on Chinese platforms. And yes, I'm definitely always like thinking about that, because I know a lot of you guys are from China, and obviously, you know, I do want to live in China in the future, but it's also a bit difficult in a way that I'm not able to translate my own videos, and you definitely need them in Chinese on Chinese platforms. So yeah. But I am sort of ish maybe sort of ish maybe. I might be able to do that in the future. I will definitely try my best to upload my videos on Chinese platforms as well. I also got one question. Someone asked if there are any pictures in the book, and the answer is no, there are no pictures. It's just all, let me show you. It's just, you know, a typical book. It's all text. So yeah, but the reason why there is no pictures, there are two reasons basically. One, also just a very practical reason. Publishing, creating a book with pictures is just way more difficult from the technical point of view, because obviously pictures require a different type of paper, so the book would cost much more, and I was already afraid that the book costs too much. The paper version of the book is $15, and so I was already like, I know that this, in for example in the US, it is a very normal price, but I know that there are some countries where this is like a lot for the book. The ebook version of the book is $8, so it is cheaper. And obviously I made it 8 on purpose. As you know, 8 is like the lucky number in China, so I really wanted to make it 8. Yeah, but I really want to be also like transparent, and the reason why the price is what it is because like one, that's how it costs to produce a book, and two, Amazon also takes like 40% out of it. That's, you know, that's the rule when you're publishing with Amazon. It's not the most ideal solution, but at the same time I felt like it was the right choice for me. I really researched that for a long time, and I was really thinking like, what do I do? But I know that a lot of my audience are people from all around the world, so I knew I needed a source of my like logistics system that would work for all countries basically, no matter where in the world you're from. And that's why I went from Amazon, because it's quite trustworthy. You know that when you order the book, you will get the book. And yeah. So Hang is asking if I had the manuscript edited before sending it to the publisher. Yes. So basically, I sent it to publishers in Poland, and I sent it to 38 different publishers, so quite a few. and one was interested, but it was the beginning of the pandemic, and then the deal didn't go through. So I ended up self-publishing the book. Let me see. Other questions. At what point living in Shanghai made you decide you were going to write a book about your experience? Oh, I love this comment. This is very sweet. Faced with the growing contradiction between East and West values, thank you for allowing us to understand each other better. Yeah, I mean, thank you for saying that. That's very sweet. And I also think that this is like a really important point, that both sides should try to be better at understanding each other. I mean, I'm not saying that I'm like, well, you know, like I have it figured out. I always understand it, you know, the whatever, like in this case, let's say Europe and China, right? No, absolutely not. But I think it's important for all of us to try to, you know, to just make more effort to understand each other and not always believe everything we read, and like understand that there's always the good and the bad. There are always two sides to every story, and yeah, not always focus only on the negativity. Of course, there are stuff that are just purely negative. That's the reality. But yeah. At what point in Shanghai did I decide that I wanted to write a book? Basically, I always wanted to write a book. I wanted to write a book since I was 8 years old. So it was not like, this is so hard because like I want to say something and then I see a comment I want to reply to. Like, what do people do? Like, what do other YouTubers do, guys? I don't know. But I want to answer this one. Do you watch China YouTubers? Yes, I do. And I love Nico and Miriam. Yeah. So I do watch other YouTubers that are especially like now when I'm not there by myself. It's nice to watch others and, you know, just like kind of feel like you're there. Back to the questions. At what point did I decide that I wanted to write a book? So I always wanted to write a book. So it's something that I've always thought about my whole life. And then when I came to China, I also described the situation in my book. It's a chapter called From Goa to China. And Goa is in India. I see some people here are very interested in India. So yeah, so basically one random day, I went to a supermarket in Wujiaochang, to Walmart, and I met this lady who was a foreigner as well, and she helped me out because I always had this issue in China. Whenever I would go grocery shopping and I would pick up fruits and I would put them in my basket, and the ladies who worked at the supermarket, who like they would always come to me and tell me that you have to weight the fruit first and you cannot just like proceed to the cashier or whatever. And I knew it, but I always just wanted to pick my fruits first and then wait it, you know? But it was, I honestly don't know. I know I've talked about it a couple of times, but it's just so funny because I don't know why it always would happen to me. Anyways, that happened to me again. And I was like trying to put a sentence together in Chinese and explain to her that like, no, I know it. I know I have to wait it. But then this other lady heard me like struggling in Chinese, and she was a foreigner, but she could speak Chinese. So she helped me out. And then we were standing in the line next to each other to wait our fruit. And we started talking. And she told me that she is actually writing a book about her youth in India and then Hong Kong. And yeah, that really inspired me to, you know, that kind of, as I told you, I always had a thought in my head, like I always wanted to write a book, but I guess for some time also, like at some point I almost like forgot about it. And then when I talked to this lady, I kind of like remember it, like walk up this thought in my head, kind of, that, whoa, like, you know, she is actually doing it. like people do it, you know, and sometimes you want to do something, but you almost feel like it's like impossible for some reason. And then you hear someone else doing it, especially when you just like talk to a real human being who's like not online, but like next to you, and you hear that person doing it. And I was like, well, okay, if that lady can write a book, so can I, you know? And I went home that day, and when I lived in the dorm, when I went to Fudan, like every single night, basically, we would always chill together, like in the lobby. We had this lobby where everyone would always like bring their homework and like eat dinner and just sit and chill. And I remember this night, like everyone was chilling in the lobby as usual, and I was so motivated that I didn't even like want to chill with people. Which I'm quite a social person, so I feel like I always choose social gatherings. Like I'll always like really, I don't know, I want to hang out with people, but yeah. I remember that night I just like went straight to my room and I sat by my desk, and yeah, I guess I had like this wave of inspiration that I told you that I had like a couple of days back when I started writing my next project. Yeah, so I sat by my desk and just started writing, and I realized that there was so much. You know, I think sometimes that's why it's good to write your thoughts on a piece of paper or on your computer, because when you see them, like you realize how much there is. And sometimes if there's anyone who wants to like write, let's say, if you think that you don't have enough to say, just like write it down. Write your thoughts, topics. Like it doesn't have to make sense to anyone else beside you, but just for you to see how much you have in your head. Because I've also really learned that working in creative industries is that like you often have to like get things out of your head, and you have to start, even if you don't have an idea and you have no idea what to do, what you're gonna, you know, what your next step is. I think it's just really important to just start doing something, like even small things. And as you do, ideas come. As it's sort of almost like you start to work your brain, and like wheels start rolling and ideas start coming. Yeah. Will you also write a book about Bangkok in the future? Do you prefer Shanghai or Bangkok? Yes, I think I will write a book about Bangkok in the future. I definitely really, really want to, because I think I would have a lot to say as well. And I do love Bangkok a lot. It's hard to choose, you know, because this is like those two cities are just so different. I've lived in Shanghai more than I've lived in Bangkok, and I studied Chinese. And like even when I was not in China, I did a bachelor in international business in Asia with focus on China. So like I've always learned so much about China. And I feel like with Bangkok, with Thailand, I have a bit of a different relationship, because I've only learned like, you know, a couple of simple sentences in Thai, which I really regret now. I should definitely made more effort when I was there. And in general, I feel like I know less about Thailand than I know about China. But I also realized that it's like a good motivation for me to find out more about Thailand, because Thailand definitely has like a very special place in my heart. You know, the thing is about Thailand and China, you cannot compare these two. Like they're so different. And lifestyle in Shanghai and Bangkok are also just completely different. You know, Bangkok is more chill. Like I think if I would absolutely have to choose, I think like I kind of have more of a deeper relationship with Shanghai. But then there are also things that Bangkok really has that Shanghai doesn't have. Like lifestyle is easier. People are more calm. People are more chilled. And I love the heat. You know, I'm like that kind of weird person who likes the heat. And I love the lifestyle of like pool and palm trees, and also being able to have a city. That's a thing, because of course going on holiday is nice and when there is a pool. But I love the fact that in Bangkok you can work, you can have this very like multicultural city life, but at the same time you you know, you have a pool at home, let's say, or you know, you can go to like Oh, there's someone from Thailand. Hi, nice to see you. So yeah, that's why it's just very difficult to choose which one I like better. But I really hope I can write something about Thailand in the future, because that would also be a very good excuse for me to go back to Thailand. That's one. I think I would go back to Thailand no matter what, because obviously Thailand is like one of the greatest countries ever. But I would love to go to Thailand for a longer period of time, you know, like a good couple of months, let's say, and like do a very like profound like research, you know, talk to people, like interview people, both like Thai people and expats, and like you know, hear stories from different angles and all that. That would be like, that's a dream of mine that I had for a long time. But yeah, I do think that like my experience in Thailand was also quite unique, because a lot of people go to Thailand on vacation, a lot of people go there for backpacking and stuff like that. And I went there for school. So that was like a completely different thing. I'm glad you like my Bangkok vlogs, and more than Shanghai. Okay, why? You know what I always want? Like, people often tell me that like, especially whenever I move, like when I moved to Warsaw, everyone's like, I hate, not everyone, but there are people who were telling me like, I hate your Warsaw vlogs. Your vlogs were so much better when you were in Shanghai or Bangkok. And people would be like, go back to Shanghai. And I'm like, man, it's not that easy. But yeah, I don't know. But in a way, I kind of get it. You know what I get? Like, it did happen to me a few times that I watched like YouTubers from Australia, because I always find it really interesting. I've never been to Australia, so I love watching like people who live in places where especially I haven't been, that I also find like, you know, Australia is obviously beautiful and very interesting. So I watched these YouTubers, and some of them would become like successful and they would move to Los Angeles, and then I would lose interest, because like I'm just not that interested in Los Angeles, and it's something you just see everywhere also on social media. It doesn't seem so unique. So I guess maybe that's what people meant with like me going from Shanghai or like living in Asia to living in Poland. Yeah. What is your accent? My accent, I mean, it's definitely not anything you mentioned. It's not British or Australian. I guess my accent is just mixed, but mostly influenced by American accent. And that's not because I've never lived in America. I guess that's simply because, you know, everything is, well, series, movies, you know, people speak with American accents. I guess that's influenced the way I talk. But I guess my accent, I know my accent is not like typical Polish accent, or not typical, well, definitely not Danish accent. I don't even know if I have any like Danish influence in my accent, but probably I've learned English in Denmark for a long time. So I think my accent might be a mix of like a little bit of Polish, a little bit of Danish accent, and then who knows what. I don't really know what my accent is. It also changes all the time. So, you know. Where do you prefer, Shenzhen or Shanghai? What do you prefer? Well, I've never lived in Shenzhen. I've only went there for like a couple of days, but I definitely would consider living in Shenzhen. So I think that's already like a big thing. I think Shenzhen is really, really cool. I was surprised by how cool it is. I really love these places where you just don't have big expectations, or you just don't know what to expect. And then you go there and you're surprised and you love it. I think that's like a next level experience, because obviously it's great to go to places where you have high expectations and then it turns out great. But places that you don't know much about can be like really fascinating. I think that's just something that really fascinates me. Like, some of my favorite trips are to like, for example, a day that I spent in Manila once. Like, that's like one of my favorite memories, because obviously I love Philippines, but when I went to the islands, I did expect islands in Philippines to be beautiful, and you know, they were beautiful. So it was kind of like, you know, expectations matched the reality. So, but then Manila, a lot of people told me like, oh, there's nothing to do in Manila, don't go to Manila. And I went anyways. And I loved it. I had such a great time. And it was just very interesting to see something that not that many people see. And I don't know, I'm the type of person that I can really appreciate different countries and different cities for what they are. And for me, like, not everything has to be like Paris or New York, like, if only because something is not perfect doesn't mean that I'm like not enjoying it. Yeah. Cloud Art is saying that Shenzhen is worse than Shanghai in terms of culture. Well, I can imagine that, Shenzhen is obviously a new city, so that's very different than Shanghai. What I love about Shanghai is that it's it's an old city that has so much culture and so much history, and well, Shanghai is really the best city in China. I don't know if you agree, but um, yeah, actually, what's really interesting is that if you guys are interested in books about Shanghai, I read a lot of books about Shanghai when I was writing my own book for research, and I read this really cool book. I think it's called Shanghai Grand or Grand Shanghai something. It's basically about Shanghai before the First World War. So more than 100 years ago. And what many people don't know, I actually didn't know that either, is that back then, before the wars, Shanghai used to be like quite a multicultural, like a quite developed city. Like, there was this hotel in Shanghai that is still there. I think it's called I think the hotel is called Ground or something. Anyways, it's like one of the hotels on the Bound. And it was like 16th floor, 16 floors, and it used to be one of the tallest buildings in the world back then. So yeah, Shanghai used to be like really like multicultural city, and actually it had a large expat community. There were like 50,000, something around that, 50,000 expats, foreigners living in Shanghai before the war, which for these days it was a lot. So Shanghai was like a really multicultural city back then. So why did I even start talking about it? Yeah, I guess I wanted to tell you that if you're interested in like culture and history of Shanghai, that's a very interesting book to read. Have you ever, someone is asking if I've ever done white money jobs. White monkey. No, I haven't done any white monkey jobs. I was a student in China both times. The first time I studied at Fudan University, and the second time I went to IFA. It's like a French school. I was doing my MBA in luxury brand management, and I did the first half of the MBA, so first year in China, and then the second year in Paris. So IFA is a French school, but they have a campus. Well, the main campus is in Paris, in France, but then they have a campus in Shanghai as well, and Istanbul actually as well. But I did the program with Shanghai and Paris. So I never worked in China. So that's also something I really like look forward to in the future, to see what is it like to have a job and, work life in China, because that's not something I've ever done. I just went to school there. Oh, there's someone from Poland, Marcin. Hey. Witaj. How do you remember so many things while you were there? Do you have habits, taking notes, or film everything like you always do? That's a question from Dean. Well, yes to no to filming. Actually, the very first time I went to China, when the book is happening, let me show it to you again. I feel like I should put it like behind me, but I don't have anywhere to put it. So let me just like randomly hold it like this. The first time I went to China, when this book is happening, when the stories from this book are happening, I didn't vlog. I didn't even know what YouTube was, or maybe I knew, but I didn't even watch any YouTubers. Actually, a friend of mine that is a YouTuber as well, some of you guys might know her, she introduced me to YouTube when I was in China. So the first time when I was at Fudan, I was not filming anything. But yes, I was writing down. I kept a diary, and I was writing down notes and my thoughts. And honestly, like, that's, if you want to write something in the future, my main advice would be definitely like, you have to do it. Martin is asking if I'm half American. No, I'm Polish, like 100% Polish. Both my mom and dad are Polish. And Nelson is asking if it's my first time live stream. Am I so bad? Is that why you're asking that? No, it's not my first time live stream, but it's my first time live streaming by myself. And that's a very different experience because, as you can see, I'm like totally distracted between like, you know, looking at the comments and everything and trying to like keep up with the questions. But at this point, I'm like, fuck the questions, I guess. What was I what was I even saying before? Oh, I was writing down things. Yes, when I was in China, I was writing down things and my thoughts, mainly thoughts, you know. I think that's really important because we often remember certain things, but with time, we might not remember how we felt. And actually, I've talked a lot about it in my book, that I'm really glad that I wrote down, for example, like how freaking, you know, unhappy I was in the beginning when I moved to China, because I think with time, I would forget a lot of this, or I would just like, you know, I'm getting distracted again. Yeah, like with time, we tend to forget a lot, and that's just like human nature. That's like how our brains work. And often also with time, we tend to like idealize the past. So, you know, now when I think about China, when I think about my experience being at Fudan, I think about my friends and like, you know, chilling in the lobby and partying. And I honestly, if I wouldn't write, you know, about my experience going out in Shanghai for the first time and describe it in my the chapter Shanghai by Night is Scary, I don't think I would ever remember that, because for me now it just seems so bizarre that I would even think that Shanghai is scary. It seems like one of the safest places ever. I felt much safer in Shanghai than I felt in Copenhagen, or, well, Paris, definitely safer than Paris. And unfortunately, Paris is not the safest place ever. But yeah, so I think it's crucial to keep a diary, to write things down. That's also something I've learned with YouTube. Like whenever I have an idea or a thought of something I want to say in my videos, I cannot wait and count on my memory. And like, trust me, we forget. Like, you forget the best ideas, you will forget them. So whenever I have an idea, I have like 100,000 notes on my phone. I just like pull up my phone and I write them down. And sometimes when I'm really lazy and I don't want to write, I just like voice record messages for myself with ideas. Yeah. Do you guys have any other questions about the book or anything else? Let me see if I saved any other interesting questions. Someone is asking like the meaning behind the name. Why did you decide to call your book Shanghai and not China? I think I kind of talked about it. I decided to call this book Shanghai and not China because obviously Shanghai is very different than rest of China. And I just felt like that was like the most fair thing to do, because my experience was very Shanghai. You know, I stayed in Shanghai, I went to school there. And I also I really love Shanghai. You know, I just really love the city. The city just spoke to me, not from the very beginning, maybe in the very beginning I didn't like it, but as soon as I started liking it more and more, the city really like stuck with me. Like I really felt at home in Shanghai, which is kind of weird because I feel like where I come from, where I grew up, it's just so different. But for some reason, Shanghai just always felt right. Like after a couple of months in Shanghai, I already had that feeling like that this is like home. Like I feel at home in this place. And I do think that I will probably like call Shanghai my more of like a permanent home in the future. I am planning to move there, and honestly, like I see myself just living there forever. I don't know forever. I don't want to say that because I don't see myself living anywhere forever. But I definitely see myself settling down in Shanghai. That's like the only place in the whole entire world where I actually see myself settling down. In general, the idea of settling down is not very appealing to me. It seems like something very scary. So I don't want to do that. But in Shanghai, I feel like I could because it's such an interesting city. Is this book in English? Yes, it is written in English. I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name, Matuk. What was your writing process? Writing in silent or with background music at home or cafes, libraries? Silent. I cannot write with music on. I cannot do anything with music on. Just chill or yeah. Well, whenever I walk around my apartment or whatever, I listen to music. But as soon as I'm working or like doing something like this creative, I need to be alone and silent. And I prefer working in my house because I like being alone when I work to really focus. Whenever I'm somewhere, I get distracted. And also, I love walking. So whenever I'm like doing something, I sit for like 10 minutes and then I walk around and then I sit again and I walk around. I think best when I walk. So when I'm working in like a library or a cafe, I feel like I cannot just like stand up and start walking randomly around the table, right? That would be weird. So that's why I kind of don't like working at cafes and places like that. John is asking if there's a Chinese version of my book. No, unfortunately, for now, the book is only in English. I hope one day I can get it translated. It would be amazing to have it in Chinese as well. That's definitely a goal for the future. For now, I just, I hope as many people read it as possible. So one day it will be possible for me to have it translated to other languages. Can I buy it in China? Yes. I mean, you can buy it on Amazon. That's the only place where you can get the book. But they do ship to China. And you can also get it as an ebook. So Dean is asking, since you left Poland for so long, do you feel disconnected with your home country at some point? How does it feel to return? Yeah, of course. Like, so I was born in Poland, but I left when I was 12. And then I came back after living abroad for like 15 years. So the reason why I also wanted to come back to Poland and see what is it like to live here is because I did feel quite disconnected. I felt like I almost didn't know I didn't know what it is like to live in Poland anymore. So yeah, I guess it's like a very deep topic. I'm glad that I came back though, because, I love Warsaw. And it just gave me an idea of what is it like to be in Poland and live in Poland again as an adult. What's like the reality of living here. I think that's really interesting for me, for sure. I'm glad that I did it. So, and I feel like now when I leave, I will always be able to come back, because I feel like at some point, if I would like stay abroad for like 20 years, especially like, those are like some of the first years of my life almost. I don't think I would ever come back to Poland. I always felt that like at some point it would just be like so just not my home anymore. So yeah, but now thanks to the fact that I did live here, I feel like whenever I will go abroad again and I want to come back, I can come back. Now I feel like Copenhagen still feels like home to me. I also know I can come back there. But I can also come back to Warsaw because actually before I moved here, I never lived in Warsaw. So Let me see if there are any more questions. So I got a question about my advice. What advice would you give to someone who wants to publish a book? But you know what? I think this is like a very long topic. So I'll probably make a video about that as well, because there is just so much to say. I've really learned so much when I was writing this book. That's one thing. I mean, it was the first book I've ever written. And writing something that long as a book is a completely different thing than writing like essays and stuff like that I would write for school. And also self-publishing, that's, you know, a whole nother journey. And I really learned so much that I think writing the next book will be so much easier. So I'll definitely make a video about that and share everything I've learned, because I feel like there's just so much. I would just talk forever. And as you can probably tell, I can talk forever about anything really. Okay, that one is good. Were there any topics difficult to write about? I mean, I guess what that person meant is, were there any topics in the book that were like difficult for me to talk about or write? Well, yeah, all the difficult topics, I guess, that I mentioned in the beginning. Like I wrote about people who had issues with substance abuse. I wrote about people who had family issues, for example. Like those were also like, those are touchy topics, and those are difficult topics where you do have to be very careful when you talk about it. I wrote about racism, for example, and that was, again, also not easy. But yeah, I mean, I'm glad about how it turned out. I think it turned out well. Yeah. So Shooting Heart is asking me, are you planning working in the fashion industry? I think a lot of people think that I did something with fashion before. I didn't. I did a degree in luxury brand management. So, you know, luxury can be everything. It can be houses, it can be cars, watches, hotels. It doesn't have to be fashion. So I've never particularly planned in working in fashion. I mean, I love fashion. If I would ever get a cool job in the fashion industry, yeah, I would love to try it out. But it's not like I specifically ever wanted to work just in fashion. Yeah. Cześć. Do you guys have any more questions about the book? I'll just show it to you again because, well, I'm also really, I'm also really happy about the cover, how it turned out. I will tell you this story. It's a funny story. I always since I started writing, I had like a very strong vision of what I wanted this book to look like. Also had a very strong vision, whatever. I kind of always knew that I wanted the picture on the cover to, well, show the skyline, which is quite obvious, right? But I wanted it to show skyline from this particular angle with the garden bridge. So this bridge, I mean, I think here it's like kind of difficult to see, but there is this like old bridge here, and I always really wanted to have picture on the cover of my first book that shows the skyline, so like the modern buildings, the the crazy freaking futuristic skyline of Shanghai. But I also really wanted to have like this element of old Shanghai. And I don't know, this particular place from where this picture was actually taken is like one of my favorite places in Shanghai. So yeah, I always wanted to have that. And also I'm really happy about the cover being kind of like pink, purple-ish. I think it looks really good. And yeah, I also think, what do you guys think? Let me know if you like it as much as I do, because I'm just like sitting here complimenting my own work. Well, yeah, but I think it also looks cool with the Chinese characters, and I'm really happy about how it turned out. So a friend of mine actually helped me to design this cover. Her name is Maria. She's also, in the credits in the book. If you ever need someone who can help you, maybe, I don't know. It's not like something she does, but she helped me out because, she's very talented. So I'm happy about that. And then in the back, I'll show you the back. In the back, as you can see, probably if you know Shanghai, this is Nanjing Road, and with the huge neon signs. So I really wanted to have that as well, because I'm one of these weird people who actually like Nanjing Road. I mean, not like, and depends when, because Nanjing Road during rush hour is not fun. Obviously, I'm not like insane, but I do like the visual aspect of Nanjing Road. I like just walking there and seeing all the like neon signs, because I feel like that's like the only place in Shanghai where you have like that many huge neon signs. I think maybe like Hong Kong is more of the place to go if you want these huge signs. But yeah, so I really like how visually how Nanjing Road looks. I think it's very Shanghai, like really represents Shanghai for me. And also like the very first place I stayed at when I just came to Shanghai was at Nanjing Road. Like the hotel was at Nanjing Road, Nanjing East Road. So I remember, when I just came to Shanghai, I would like at night, I would just like sit on the window of my hotel room and I would look at Nanjing East Road with all the neons and people and shops and everything. And I would be like, completely amazed because I've never been to China at this point. So I've never seen anything like that. So yeah, it just also had like a special like meaning for me. So, and also another thing is that I was thinking if I should put like myself on the cover. I'm so happy I didn't do this, because like some people, like influencers who write books, like they put themselves on the cover, and I get it for like actually famous people that it makes sense, but I just felt like I'm very glad that I didn't do it, because I'm not the main focus of this book, so I shouldn't be on the freaking cover. I'm glad Shanghai, pink version of Shanghai is on the cover. Yeah, the main focus of this book is, Shanghai is living in China, being a foreigner who lives in China. But it's not me. It's not a book about me. It's like China through my eyes. I'm telling you this story, but something that also did in the book that was very important for me was to share stories of other people, not only my story. That's why, I do have a lot of like, places in the book where I share stories with you that I just heard in China that other people tell me, or I saw, stories of other people. For example, like there is this chapter of my book that I also really like called Her Chinese Parents Begged Her to Leave China. And that was a story of a friend of mine who was a second generation Chinese. So she was born in Europe, but her parents were Chinese. And I thought it was a very interesting story because in her family, well, her parents who have left China like 30 years back, they actually really didn't want her to go to China. And she was the one who really wanted to go. And they would always call her, and like her mom would basically like beg her to leave and like just go back to Europe and do what all her friends were doing. So I thought it was a very interesting story for me to share as well. Like, being a second generation Chinese and having this very different experience of living in China. I talk a lot about that in my book because I had a lot of friends in China that were second generation Chinese, who were born in like Europe or US, Australia, and had Chinese parents. For them, like the experience of moving to China was also very different than my experience, because it was this weird thing where they were both treated as Chinese because they had Chinese roots, but at the same time they were foreigners. So I think a lot of them actually had a pretty hard time as well, for example, with Chinese, like with the language, because a lot of people would expect them to speak perfect Chinese, or people would get upset or, surprised when they would find out that, they look Chinese, but they don't speak Chinese. which of course is silly, because if you were born abroad, even if you have Chinese parents, that doesn't mean that your parents taught you Mandarin, right? And a lot of these people, a lot of my friends could speak different dialects, but big majority of them couldn't speak Mandarin, and that's also why they came to China in the first place. They wanted to learn more about their roots and culture. But yeah, some people were just not very good at understanding that. So Dean is asking if there are any suggestions from the publisher company. I published this book by myself, so no, because, well, it's self-publishing, so it's all me. Yeah, so I feel like it's pretty much it. Hey, Chandler. I'm so happy to hear that you like the book. It means a lot to me when people tell me that they like my book. Obviously, it's, I've worked on it for so long. It's such a long process to write a book. So it just really means a lot when you hear people liking it. It's so different than videos, because, most of the time a video can take you, it can easily take you a couple of days. And obviously it's nice to hear that people like your video. But with a book, it's such a huge project that, yeah, it just really means the world when I hear people liking it. So if there's anyone else out there who is considering reading the book, please let me know how you're liking it. I really love seeing your opinions. Okay, you guys, if you don't have any more questions, I think we're just gonna wrap this up, because now I've also talked for almost 1.5 hours. Well, anyways, thank you so much. If anyone out there is interested in getting my book, it's called I Lived in Shanghai, and it's available on Amazon. There will be a link in the description, and I'll also add it in the comments under this live stream. So yeah, thank you so much for coming over. And yeah, I will hopefully see you soon. Bye.